Hello there, fellow wanderers of the field. Starless Plains here. Welcome to a game called A Case of Distrust. It's a game that is in the feature section on Itch.io or Game Jolt. I don't know. I'll say it right on the screen over there. But if you wanted to check this game for yourself, the link is in the description below. What I've read on the description that this is based on like a 1924 kind of setting, the early 1900s, and basically you're trying to solve some kind of case or something. And of course, tell them by the kind of music that is playing in this. I mean, it's actually, I don't know, I'm pretty lured to it. I mostly have a soft spot with everything, like the fashion, the music, and the theme of everything from from anywhere around the early to mid 1900s. But something like this, I seem to be intrigued. But all right, let's get started. And just letting you know, this is an early access game. It said that it may about take 3 or 4 hours to complete this whole demo, but I don't know. Let's see how far I'll go. Okay, let's start. Ah, that's sweet, smooth jazz. I awoke in my desk chair. Across from me were his piercing amber eyes. They surprised me at first. Should have known he'd be there. I stretched and said, mid-yawn, not very nice to sneak into a sleeping woman's apartment, but his stare just continued. First the open window. I cursed the open window. Of course, that's how how he entered. I'd hoped to finally rest my eyes a while. A fate often disagrees with me. I knew I wouldn't have what he wanted. Reached into my coat, took out my knife and flicked it open. I held the knife steady. While staring back at him. Look, I said, nodding towards the desk. That's all there is. Take it or leave it. And a detective knows when she's beat, and I knew then. He wanted to search the place. That's what he would do. I sighed, knowing my weakness for his type. Alright, I said. Let's look. It let out a gleeful meow. Oh, it was a cat? Nice. In victory. I cut a piece of my apple that the cat had rejected. Always the sore winner, I jabbed. But I was smiling too, because I was telling the truth. There was absolutely no other food in my apartment. The cat often drove by to scavenge. He made a lot of noise when he thought I was holding out on him. But right now, the place was clean empty. No food anywhere. I had to prove it to him. So this is basically like a point-and-click game and probably pave your own way. Who knows? Especially with the background music, yeah. Some smooth jazz. Of course, around the 1920s. My old notebook now filled to the brim. I wrote everything down, even the minor details. Never know what could be useful. First half had my old cases. Details from the beats I used to walk in my policewoman days. Of course, policewomen were forbidden from going on patrol. But Lewis often overlooked that rule. I had taken copies of old murder cases from the SFPD records when I left. I loved reading through them, even though my own contributions were minimal. At that time, I longed for those types of jobs. The truth was, any work was hard to find for a female detective. Guess everything was, This is mostly the men that was doing most of the work. Well, not judging, I mean. Alright. That land had belonged to my Uncle Lewis. He'd been an SFPD officer. One who argued policemen could be good detectives. Even while the others jeered at me. I knew he'd been right. My current workload didn't help that claim. Thought about Lewis more often than I wanted. I was lousy at handling the emotions behind those thoughts. A newspaper had flopped on the floor. Its headlines about the death of Lenin, leader of the Red Menace sweeping Russia. It seemed the Bolsheviks had lost their heads. kept a small statue underneath the side table. It had been police evidence in a crime, and its owner hadn't wanted it back. I took a shine to it, so I snagged it for myself on my way out of the department. The regular white icebox, tinged yellow with age, half blocked the ice kitchen doorway. My income rarely kept much stocked in it, and right now it was empty. Door to the outside world. If I left now, though, the cat would start wailing so loud I would get complaints from the neighbors, so no. You need to convince him more before I could leave. Hey, what's this? Notes. Huh. Case summary. There were no cases just then, but the cat was meowing and needed attention. I had to contradict the cat. I first talking to him, and pointed the piece of evidence in my notebook that proved the apartment was empty of food. Goals. Showed the cat where the food is. That there's no food. Evidence. Statements. Wow. The cat had waltzed into my apartment a few years earlier. He kept coming back, though. There was rarely a morsel to eat. He continued his loud meowing until I proved to him the place was empty of food. It doesn't matter how doda you are, cutie pie. You got no food around. I told him. He licked his chops and looked at me. Apparently he still didn't believe me. I needed to contradict him somehow. Show him something in the apartment that would prove it was empty of food. Contradict. Let's see. Paper stack. Desk lamp, statue, newspaper, notebook, icebox. It does say that, she said that there was barely any food left in there. Let's see. Regular white icebox, tinged yellow with age, half block the kitchen doorway. I can barely kept much stock in it, and right now it's empty. Used to contradict. I opened the icebox so the cat would see inside. Empty, I told him. The cat looked quizzically at the open door, then back at me. Sorry, fella. There's no grub in there for me either. He stared at me with eyes as disappointed as I felt. Those big yellows always got to my soul. Not to my family filled my head. My sister, my parents, but never mine. Let's go with my sister. My sister Muriel had sent a letter with an update of her life in Chicago. She and her husband had just purchased a new house outside the bluster of the city. Their 3 young children were looking forward to the move. Never told Muriel, but those letters. Mostly ignored. I never told Muriel. Those letters I mostly ignored. At the time, her family was the last thing I wanted to read about. My sister had the ordinary lifestyle that I had rejected. I wanted to change the world or save myself. Let's go with change the world. I wanted to change the world, to bring justice for victims, especially the ones who no longer had a voice. Not that I was helping advance that cause with the types of cases coming my way. My mind spiraled into the usual series of questions. Had I been impacted the women's movement? Had I made any change on society at all? Was my plotting career worth losing traditional happiness? Sorry, I'm scratching my ear. What was the point in the life I had chosen? Loud meow from the cat snapped my thoughts back in the moment. Took a deep breath and grinned back at him. Guess you could scram now, I said. Nobody's gonna come knocking with food for you, fella. There immediately came a banging on the front door. Beyond a nuisance, this cat was psychic too. You ordered out? I asked him. Yeah, it would be good. Alright, let's open the door. In the doorway was the regrettably familiar face of Connor Green. I stared at him, looked past him. His company churned my stomach. his company churned my stomach. You know what? I'll just stare at him. I stared at him, a hired hand for whoever needed a job done. But Green snitched whenever he was put on a squeeze. Working the beats, I remember that all too well. Remarkably, the underground had been blind to it, but Green wasn't particularly assiduous. I was certain the criminal ranks would eventually plug him. He looked at me through the doorway with a coy smile. Well, ain't you gonna invite me inside? I started closing the door. But he stuck out a foot to stop me. Hey now, he chided. Foul way to treat a customer, Malone. I guess the main character's name is Malone. So that was his angle. Hiring me as a detective. I wonder what a bootlegger would need with a private eye. But he answered without a prompt. I'll make this quick. I could take this to the hog house, but the pigs would laugh at me. But other dicks just aren't as tempting. His grin widened. So this was gonna be quick, I said, and I started rolling a cigarette. And I wasn't quick. I had already rolled and lightened the second smoke when Green finally finished the story, and none of the important bits in my book. And I started with the letter, slipped under his door in a white envelope. The envelope contained a single typewritten leaf, which he handed to me. It read, end your game, or we'll end you. It had no signature, instead ending with only a small scribble on the bottom right corner that resembles a black hand. Green had a lead on a new rum running scheme. Connection from Vancouver. He'd given a sample to Tiny Paul. The gangster read the Tin Spoon speakeasy for mob boss Jerry Ferry. They agreed to buy in for more. Green surmised the letter was about his rum running. He suspected Redstone Stable, another bootlegger, of sending the letter. He told me that stable ran a barber shop during the day and gave me the address. Green needed to know who the threat was from. He'd get Paul's gang to deal with them and continue his scheme to get rich. What is it called back in that day? A sleaze? A weasel? Something like that? A fink, probably? If I go snooping myself, he concluded, folks see I'm not trusting people. No trust leads to no customers. I need to play it low-key. Which is where you come in. I raised an eyebrow and stared at him, through the cigarette smoke. Something in his yarn was still twisted. Of course I can tell. He must have noticed my reticence, because he said, you know, I work closely with Lewis. I'm sure he would want to protect me as much as any other victim. You used to work with Lewis? Malone's uncle? My uncle. Lewis had put me in the forest. I finally accepted Lewis's death. I was still searching for answers. I was still searching for answers after his death. He'd been a man obsessed with helping victims and bringing justice to those beyond salvation. With that ethos, or ethos, however you pronounce it, I never understood how he could have taken his own life. Those thoughts haunted me. He took his own life? I quit the SFPD and started my own practice, taking his philosophy. Is Green worth my time? Would he be worth Lewis? Lewis's? Green had tipped off my uncle in a few cases. I wonder if that was enough to warrant my protection. Before I could think past my headache, he threw a bill in my lap. Keep the C note as a retainer. And don't worry about getting in touch. I'll find you later for a chat. He turned down the hallway and I let him go. If he was willing to give me $100 with no commitment, I wouldn't stop him. I turned back to the apartment, still confused about the whole story. The headache wasn't helping me either. Whenever I lacked clarity, a trip to the Southern Coffee was usually the cure. Cat had waltzed into my apartment a few years earlier. I kept coming back through the... Alright. I mounted a gold plate on an outside that reads PC Malone, Private Investigator. Let's leave. There was only one place I needed to go to clear my mind. Southern Coffee. Southern Coffee was a basement dive. It wasn't modern, hip, or ever busy. It was my favorite place to down some paint. Especially in the company of the best bartender in the city. Nice. Ah, one of those old Ford automobiles. I gave my address and slouched in the back seat of the taxicab. I thought a good way to pass the journey might be to chat with the driver. Talk? He was young, not a teenager, but not far off. The redness in his face and a mean scowl told me he was angry. Don't much like driving taxicabs? I offered. He looked quizzically at me through the rearview mirror before understanding what I meant. No, lady, I like a ride enough. Just some bozo for you were in here was giving me hell because I looked like the boy his daughter's going with. Went off about how my generation was ruining America. That scumbag don't know jack. I wasn't much interested. Sounds like you know. Sounds like you know. Sounds like you know more? I asked. I'm no genius, he replied. You talk to anyone from the last century, they'll tear off your ear for just being young. How'd they get so high, I wonder? Given the world in the 1890s, like a smooth running roadster, then what'd they do? Bashing on every curb in sight, their greed, their worth, their politics? Now they give us a ruined clunker, and they're mad at our manners when we grab the keys. Yeah. People from the late 1800s and all. Wow. I guess everything was changing during that time, along with people that were living during the 1800s. I agreed with him. The Great War was the hardest fought, at home and abroad, I said. The old man would put us there had some nerve, he replied hotly. And after those years, they tell us to get in line. It's a bum deal to me, sister. We're in the information age, and the news of the world is crap. They're just angry we can see their folly. Interesting. The taxicab rolled to a stop. Anyhow, the driver said, thanks for letting me blow off steam. Have a nice day. Opened the car and stepped out. Southern Coffee was an adamant diner. Ethel Burgess, or Ethel, the lone waitress, was friendly to help with any inquiry. Of course, if you're waking her right, she'd show you the way to the downstairs toilet, where Frankie played bathroom attendant. Southern Coffee had the distinct feeling of home. The familiar smell of mold in the old basements was enough to put a grin on my face. Interesting. Frankie kept a collection of pre-prohibition bottles on a shelf behind the counter. The shades of colors were far more alluring than the opaque jugs of modern swill. This label had a poem in it. Fill full your cups, feel no distress. All at our thoughts shrinking less. We'll do a good deed nevertheless. Poetic. Alright. This label showed a rearing horse in front of a forest. I had no idea how the horse related to the California's most genuine bourbon whiskey. Though I suppose I did stare at the picture long enough to whet my appetite for the bottle's contents. Intriguing. What's this? This bottle showed a California bear with the words Bohemian type in block letters underneath. I doubt that the bear had ever heard of Bohemia, but he did look carefree. Nice. Register. Once I asked Freddie to lend me some cash from the register, he growled so fierce that I decided not to ask again. I didn't think his employers would notice before I got it back, but maybe he just wanted to save me from myself. Frankie had a bond with the old shaker at the end of the bar. I was surprised he hadn't named it. He could sling a mean drink, but though he'd only use a good liquor if he liked you. Frankie liked me. The bar stools were crooked and worn. My usual one was the center of the room. I could sit on it for hours if Frankie had a yarn to spin. Of course, the sauce helped me keep me in place. I grabbed the wine bottle on the bar and examined its label. It features a picture of the grapes and the words, sacramental use only. Frankie looked at me with a spark in his eye. Go ahead, I said. Give it a swig. Sacramental. Like religious stuff? Don't. I shook my head. Too much. He scoffed and grabbed the bottle from me, turning it through his hands. I suppose you only like that bootleg paint. Well, I'll have you know that rabbis charge more than a nickel for this beauty. Only this type of Napa wine is made from the Zinfandel grape. It was a unique aroma. I've been trying to learn more about wine. Seemed everyone knew their stuff but me. I know that Frankie had said about the origin of the grape as he set the bottle back on the bar. Since when did you know about grapes? Since when did you know about grapes? I chided. Frankie let out a bellied laugh. Some of those grapes were older than me, Malone, and I've known about them since I was a small tot. That's why I'm so good at my job, you know? Frankie sighed. Too bad more folks can't taste them. That's women's league is the devil. The Women's Christian Temperance. Let's try that out. The Women's Christian Temperance Union was under feminist Frances Willard, a positive force for the suffrage of women, but her staunch support of prohibition, along with the union's massive political clout, irked the very wet San Franciscan public, and she particularly wasn't popular with bartenders. Fascinating. Because back then, women didn't even have much rights until probably later on in the mid-1900s, probably? I think, if I know my history right. If not, you can probably write in the comments below on how bad my memory is. Take a seat, he said. I'll make you something else. He was a big fella. He's been a decent pitcher. He was a fantastic orator. He was a fantastic orator. I knew when to be a good year, too. For my money, there hasn't ever been, nor will there ever be a more loyal barman. Sorry if I was tongue-tied right now. Alright, outside of the bar. You got the spooks PC? He asked. You're warned as a catcher's mitt. I suppose my exhaustion showed. I won $100 for nothing, and I can't let it go. I told Frankie about the case. The threatening letter sent to Connor Green, and how he assumed it was related to his bootlegging and his suspicion of Redstone Stable. The story took longer than I wanted, Frankie showing genuine interest by asking many questions. When I finished, he threw me the whiskey sour he'd been stirring. I took a large gulp and gave a sigh as thanks. Well, Green's case is better than most of what you've given, he said with more enthusiasm. At least it's not more of the adultery bunk. Sure, I replied. But I started with the goal in mind. What's the point in helping a man like Green? Frankie clicked his tongue in his teeth. Lawyer or priest? Why does it matter? Let me ask you, are the clients you have now the types you want to help? I admitted they weren't. I told him that I wanted more from my detecting life. It could be that Green's case shoots your career forward, Malone. I sighed and stared down at my drink. My daze was interrupted by the basement door opening, then slamming shut. A small, blustering woman began marching towards me. She was wearing a light blue cloche, probably how you pronounce it. A light blue cloche hat with a gray ribbon tilted back on her head, a scarf that's similar blue draped around her neck. But I was startled by what she wore under it. A gray trench coat that looked too large for her frame. It was exactly like the one that had belonged to Lewis? She hurled insults at me. A while. All I could do was sit and take it. I ran out of gas and started breathing heavily. I set my drink on the bar and looked at her in the eyes. Studied her features. I studied her features more thoroughly. It was plain she was a knockout. Now that she finished shrieking, beyond the latest blush and lipstick, she had the natural soft skin and bright eyes perpetually desired by the opposite gender. While I was eyeing her, she caught her breath and restarted her triad. I'm the wife of the bum who sneaks into what? I'm the wife of the bum who sneaks into your bed? I asked the cat. Where'd you get that coat? I just gaped. I asked the cat. But the humor wasn't her angle, and she launched into another poetic stanza. And you just left your sty this morning, she finally ended. That was when I gathered she was Connor Green's wife. Wow. Mrs. Green, I'm a PI, not a homewrecker. I don't think your husband is in his line of business would want to bet a dick anyhow. Her look was pure incredulity. A woman in that line of work? She questioned. I don't believe it. Let's prove it. Connor Green had just given me a case that involved the bootlegging. I still wasn't sure if he'd be worth my time. I said it a heads up. Alright, evidence. Alright, Southern Coffee. My bottle. My home. Oh yeah, Green's letter. The day before he came to me, Green had received a typewritten letter that reads, "End your game or we'll end you back. Or we'll end you." It was signed with the only small black hand in the bottom right hand corner. Alright, show. I told her about why Connor had come to me. The bloodlegging and threats. You see, Mrs. Green, this is what I do. There's not much more I could show you to prove it. It still took more coaxing for her to believe me, but eventually she came around. She seemed grateful I explained it to her. Apparently, she had seen her husband leave my apartment and, distraught, she had followed me all the way to Frankie's basement and decided to confront me. I suppose I lost my head after what I thought I'd seen, she said, and she began to cry. Damn. So she was probably thinking that her husband had cheated on her with Malone, the main character that I was playing at? Frankie, ever chivalrous to a dimpled girl, came around the bar and held her up. "Now that's alright, Miss Green. Why don't I hail you a cab and send you on your way back?" She agreed, and they walked together up the stairs. When Frankie returned, I said to him, "You turned night real quick." He snorted a laugh. "Ah, hell. You can't have that siren in here. With the torture yelling like that, every street bugger would have come to her rescue." Miss Green is a torch singer? Well, I learned she was a Mrs. Connor Green just now, when she came in here. I'd only seen her as Little Fanny, singing lead for the jazz band and the Tin Spoon. "The Tin Spoon," I said. "Tiny Paul's joint? That's where Green is selling his liquor." "Say, you think that's where she met her husband?" I laughed. "You're the real sleuth, Frankie." He made a sarcastic bow. I shook my head. "You're telling me you escorted our little torture out just to avoid a bit of hot water?" Frankie flushed his head. "What are you talking about, Malone? I was never good with emotions, but it was plain that Frankie had instantly fallen for the girl." "For what if I have more to squeeze out of her?" I said. "What more could you possibly want from Little Fanny? You can't have anything to do with Green's mess." Tell me, contradict. Evidence. Statement. Singer of the Tin Spoon? Green was a torch singer. She was known as Little Fanny. How does that prove she knows anything? Frankie said. He was right. I didn't see how Ms. Green in any of this. Guess that wasn't it. Maybe following her husband? She had followed her husband because she suspected infidelity. Probably. Miss Green followed her husband to my place, I said. Why would she do that? Frankie rolled his eyes. PC, if you were Green's wife, would you trust him with anything? I'm sure he'd always up to something. I shrugged and stood up from the bar stool. What had just happened was quite the ruckus. It seems like my cue was to move along. Alright. The worn stairs led me to the outside world. Alright. I was heading up the stairs when Frankie called after me. So what are you gonna do? I've been thinking. About Little Fanny. I've been thinking about Little Fanny. Suppose even mobsters had people who cared about them. And she's been wearing Lewis's old jacket. Or perhaps Green and Lewis have been closer than I realize. I guess I'll take Connor Green's bait, I replied. Got nothing better on the stove. You might need the help. Something still stinks, though. Well, what's your plan? Frankie used to ask. The way I see it, I have 3 goals in mind right now. Green hired me for a job. Find the guy who wrote the letter. That's the basic part. But you want more? Asked Frankie. I nodded. Green's a shady character. I have to learn about him. Who is this guy? Digging his past. I can't go back to him blind. But then there's something about his bootlegging. How had Green got a connection like that? What's his source exactly? Squeezing that lemon might give me more juice. Detective case is waiting to be solved. That sound alright, he replied. So where's it you're off to? Got 3 leads. That bootlegger stable, who Green claims sent him the letter. The Tin Spoon Lounge, where I might learn more about Green's rum-running scheme, and Mrs. Green, who could give me more dirt on her husband. Frankie nodded his approval. Well, if you're ever stuffed, come back to see me. You can never solve anything without talking over it. I smiled and went up the stairs. So, maybe, if I were to be stuck on something, maybe I could at least go back over here and probably talk to Frankie about it. Probably. Right. I debated on where to go next. Southern Coffee, Staples Barbershop, Tin Spoon Lounge, or Green's house. Well, I'm definitely gonna leave it over here. This is actually pretty fantastic, I have to admit. It went out smoothly. I love the theme of this. Detectives work, the early 1900s, I mean. But, I don't know. This is still an early access game, man. I don't know. I don't want to spoil them for myself, but there's still more ahead of this game. But of course, if you still want me to play more of this game, comment on the comment section below and tell me which place I should probably go next. Either the Southern Coffee, the Staple Barbershop, the Tin Spoon Lounge, or Green's house. Who knows? My dear Watson, I believe it's a detective case that we need to solve. Wrong thing. Alright, so that's all for now. Thank you all for watching. Hope to see you in the next episode. See you then.